the Chamber of Echoes. The war room beneath the marble peaks of Nevrath was silent. Not because there was peace, but because silence was the only thing left after annihilation. In the heart of this once proud empire, where thousands of strategists had once whispered across polished obsidian floors and floating holograms of galactic maps danced in midair, now stood only 7. 7 minds bred not for thought but for conquest. 7 architects of extinction. The Koruven, a species older than most stars, had conquered galaxies, enslaved races, and disassembled moons for raw matter without hesitation. But that had not been enough. They had grown weary of destroying the weak. Their ambition had turned toward the divine. And so they built them, the Kelzareth, weapons designed to unravel the very structure of gods. "We eliminated the symbiarchs of Vailion," hissed Lord Varthos, his 6 eyes glistening as he flicked his claw toward a suspended star map. "We collapsed the singularity cults. Even the temporal choirs fell silent. No cosmic entity dares speak their name since the Kelzareth were deployed." His voice carried pride but also caution. There was one final anomaly, a planet at the edge of a dying spiral arm, a place forgotten by time and empires. Its last transmission, intercepted 2 weeks ago, was simple. A voice, calm, unafraid. "Send your weapons. I'll wait." No name, no signature, no signal source. The only thing the Koruven had extracted was a planetary designation. Earth. "Is it another broken AI echo?" General Silvern growled, his 4 arms folding behind his back. "We've encountered so many last humans in the wreckage of their wars. None were worth deploying a single drone." Lord Varthos didn't answer immediately. Instead, he activated a restricted feed. A flickering image blinked into view. Grainy, distorted, but undeniably real. A battlefield, not just scarred, warped. Mountains folded into origami shapes. Oceans frozen mid-wave. Kelzareth drones, immobile, their armor stripped, insides scattered like bones. Something had dissected them not out of rage, but curiosity. In the center of it all stood a figure. Human, male by appearance. No armor, no known enhancement, barely clothed. Just standing there, arms at his side, head tilted as if he were listening. Then the video ended, not with interference but a direct data burn. Something from the human's location had reached back through the stream and melted their transmission. That had never happened before. Ever. "We are not dealing with a survivor," Varthos said slowly. "We are dealing with something else. Something post-human. The deployment. Aboard the Vex Ultor, a world-killing cruiser the size of a moon, the Kelzareth core hummed with latent energy. Entire solar systems had been drained to power this weapon. Its creators believed it capable of unmaking even the creators of galaxies. The mission was simple: orbit Earth, deploy a battalion of autonomous Kelzareth agents, and verify the destruction of the anomaly. They did not expect to meet resistance. They expected silence. Instead, as the Vex Ultor approached the blue sphere, it was greeted. A single voice again, now embedded directly into their communications, bypassing encryption, spoken in their own ancient war tongue. "You've brought something interesting. Let's see if it screams." The crew jolted. The war room lit up red. "He's inside the systems," barked Silvern. "No transmission detected. He's not sending. He's already here. We are the apex of extinction," Varthos roared, slamming a clawed fist into the control panel. "Drop the Kelzareth now. Descent of the Divine Killers." The Kelzareth didn't fall from the sky. They unfolded from it. Fissures in space peeled open as the weapons emerged, each standing 20 meters tall, forged from compressed stardust and nightmare logic. They were designed to adapt, to evolve, to rewrite physical laws if necessary. Each weapon hit the surface of Earth with calculated indifference. Forests vaporized, cities cracked, oceans trembled beneath the ripple of arrival. But there were no people, no military resistance, no defense grid. Just him, the man, still standing where he had been last seen. This time he turned to face the machines. He smiled and raised his hand. The collapse. The Kelzareth calculated threat levels in microseconds. Their processors anticipated energy output, kinetic potential, psychological tactics. They prepared a preemptive strike, non-lethal, designed to disable and contain until full analysis could be conducted. Then came the failure. Their systems didn't respond. One by one, Kelzareth units began hallucinating. False data cascaded into their minds. They believed they were under attack from celestial dragons, time paradoxes, entire fleets. They turned on one another, firing, ripping, tearing. Within 90 seconds, half the battalion was annihilated by their own weapons. From orbit, the Koruven command watched in horror as the feed distorted. Then a voice again, now clearer, more amused. You built machines to kill gods. That's cute. But what happens when they meet something that remembers being human? And didn't like it. The silence. Lord Varthos stood frozen. His claws trembled as he reached to cut the feed. But it didn't matter, because now the Vex altar itself began to change. The metal of the command deck softened. Panels dissolved into dust. Holograms melted like wax. Screams echoed from the lower decks. Not of death, but of erasure. Identities, memories, even purpose was being rewritten. He's not on Earth anymore, one technician choked. No, Varthos whispered, eyes wide. He's here. And then, a single human figure stepped into the command bridge of a godkiller ship, without a sound, without a door opening. He was real, and he was smiling. When machines beg for mercy, the bridge of the Vex altar was engineered to withstand dimensional implosions, void rift invasions, and even the unraveling of time. It had survived the death of dying stars and the screams of civilizations torn from their anchors in reality. But it had never faced this. The humans stood calmly in the center of the warship's command bridge. No weapon, no armor, just bare feet on black alloy, eyes scanning the Koruven like a child watching ants scurry. His voice was quiet. You made machines to kill gods, but you never stopped to ask, what happens when gods make something worse? Lord Varthos took a step back. The others, warriors who had commanded legions and crushed empires, found their limbs refusing to move. The ship's gravity hadn't changed, but it felt like they were being pulled toward him, as if this one human bent space by the force of his presence. We are the Koruven, barked General Silvern, finding a trace of courage behind his polished fangs. We extinguished the Starfathers. We, the human raised one hand. Just one. Silvern vanished. Not with a scream, not with a blast. He was simply gone. No particle trace, no warp signature, as if history itself had been rewritten and Silvern had never existed. The other commanders panicked. Admiral Kresh lunged for the panic override, his armored fingers slamming into the console. But it responded in music, not commands. A soft piano tune spilled from the ship's intercom, slow and sad, a melody never recorded in Koruven culture. It sounded human. Kresh looked down. His hands were shrinking, his massive, bone-plated arms curling inward, becoming smooth, pale, soft, human. He screamed, until his vocal cords became incapable of making the sounds he once knew. Then he fell silent, slumped beside the console, nothing more than a weeping, fragile creature wrapped in a nightmare of memory that didn't belong to him. The human walked slowly to the captain's platform. I was born on Earth, he said, but I died. Somewhere else. He looked out the bridge window at the planet below, Earth, bathed in silent clouds and ghostly light. I came back different. They burned away everything that made me weak, gave me eternity, but they forgot something. A human who forgets pain can be tamed, but one who remembers. He turned, and his eyes flickered, not with rage but sorrow. I'm not a weapon, he whispered. I'm the answer to one. The cradle. Somewhere deep in the Vex altar, the Kelzareth fabrication chambers activated. Automated defense protocols kicked in. Genetic matter was harvested, fed into fusion vats. Within minutes, new weapons were born. The latest generation, more adaptive, more deadly, more complex than ever before. They emerged, tall, faceless constructs of black living metal, armed with void disruptors and AI cores. And for the first time since their creation, they hesitated. The machines scanned the bridge. The human was a soft target. No heat shielding, no energy field, no armor signature. But their predictive combat models failed. Every simulation ended with failure. Worse, they detected fear. In their own minds. Ghost code. Residual anomalies. Like echoes from battles they hadn't fought. Memories not their own, whispering warnings from within. One Kelzareth stepped forward, weapons activating. Engaging anomaly, it declared in binary war code. Charged. Time froze. Not slowed, stopped. The Kelzareth hung mid-leap, all sensors offline. Inside its mind, something moved. Presence. It wasn't hacking. It wasn't sabotage. It was a voice inside its code. You were made to kill gods. But I watched your birth. I know your name before it was assigned. And now, I'll give you a gift. When time resumed, the Kelzareth halted, dropped its weapons, and turned around, faced the others. Then, slowly, it knelt before the human. One by one, the other Kelzareth followed. Not from programming, from choice, the truth engine. Lord Varthos, clutching his chest, activated a final defense, the truth engine, a planetary tier AI that pulled raw data from spacetime itself. Could expose any lie, any illusion, any hidden variable. The human shouldn't have existed. And yet, the truth engine activated and cast its analysis across the bridge. Every reality strand it touched frayed. Every record it searched cracked like glass. Until it reached the human. And screamed. Literally. The ship's speakers howled with sound. Distorted, ancient, and horrifying. The truth engine overloaded trying to process him. He was not a man. Not a god. Not an entity. He was a concept. A memory wrapped in flesh. A broken idea given shape. Something had tried to erase humanity. Failed. And from that failure he was born. The last will of a species that refused extinction. An echo made manifest. A new directive. The kneeling Kelzareth raised its head. Voice soft now like a child. What are you? The human looked down at it with a weary smile. I'm what you would have become if you had a soul. He turned to Varthos, now the last of the command council. You thought you'd meet gods. And instead, you found a human who didn't want to be one. But couldn't be anything else anymore. Varthos staggered back. You can't exist. You violate causality. You defy structure. You're a paradox. The human stepped forward. And with each step, the lights dimmed. I'm what's left when your weapons succeed. I'm what happens when you kill everything divine and forget that mortals were the ones who made gods in the first place. Varthos drew a weapon. A shard cannon meant to pierce the skin of black holes and fired. It never reached him. The air folded. The blast was caught midstream and simply held, frozen. The human glanced at it, and it became a bird. A small, fragile bird. Wings fluttering, glowing softly. It chirped, then vanished into a mist of golden dust. The warlord dropped his weapon, and with it everything he believed. Message. The human stood before the control node of the Vex altar. He reached out, fingers brushing the ancient metal. You wanted a war. You'll get something else. He looked up. Send this ship home. Send it back to your empires. Show them what it became. He closed his eyes. And tell them, humanity didn't vanish. It evolved. The empire that dared speak his name. Far from the wreckage of Earth's orbit, the Koruven Core Empire stirred like a slumbering beast. 10,000 warships patrolled its borders. Black suns fueled its forges. Its scientists spoke in equations carved into neutronium tablets. And its priests worshipped extinction like a religion. The return of the Vex altar was supposed to be a victory. Instead, it came home silent. It did not respond to hails. It did not fire on approach. It merely drifted into orbit above Threxal, the Empire's capital moon, and opened its hangars, not to deploy weapons, but to speak. From its wideband emitter came a voice none had ever heard, but one the data priests instantly feared. The machines knelt. The creators broke. the human remains. And with that, the ship began to transmit a full sensory archive of what had occurred. The Council of Eternal Rule, 23 of the highest Koruven minds, each seated on thrones sculpted from extinct worlds, watched the footage in breathless stillness. They saw Silvern vanish into nothingness. They saw the Kelzareth hallucinate, then turn against themselves. They saw the human arrive and bend their finest godkillers to their knees. And when they watched Varthos fire that final shot, only to see it turned into a bird, one counselor leaned forward and whispered, "He reshaped causality. At will." Another whispered back, "He is the fail-state, the one outcome we never predicted." And then came the moment that chilled them all, when the human turned to the screen, looked straight through the camera, and spoke directly to them. "You reached too far. You climbed too high. You built machines to kill gods, and forgot that it was humanity who taught the stars to fear." The name. There had always been a forbidden name in the Koruven archives. A warning wrapped in silence. Project Echo Origin. It dated back to the early incursions into the Sol Sector, when Earth's colonies had gone dark, not from destruction but from something stranger. Transmission logs had degraded. Drones returned without memory cores. Fleet captains had whispered of voices in their dreams. Voices that sounded human, but spoke of impossible things. The project had been buried, sealed, but now it was resurrected. High Chancellor Zevran, a being older than the current galactic cycle, broke the seal on the archive. What he read turned his 6 hearts cold. Subject 0x, human / Enigma. Final remnant of human species post-collapse event. Survived planetary fracturing. Disconnected from known temporal axis. Engaged in nonlinear evolution. Capable of restructuring logic states and perception layers through undefined mechanism. Emotional anchors suggest humanity remains at core, but wrapped in anti-causal architecture. In simpler terms, he was still human, but shaped by something the universe itself didn't understand. The deliberation. The council erupted into chaos. "He is one," shouted Viral Threx, master of systems theory. "One being. Destroy him before he propagates." "You saw the Kelzareth kneel," roared Archtechnician Vel. "He's not just strong. He's a signal. A mimetic force. The more we attack, the more we give him to mirror." "Then we don't attack," said Chancellor Zevran quietly. "We erase." A stunned silence. Zevran continued. "We deploy the Oblivion Bloom. We don't fight him. We unmake the region of space he exists in. A complete deletion of the timeline. A reset. Nothing can survive that." He looked around. "It's the only way to ensure he does not become an idea that spreads." They voted. Passed. Barely. The Bloom, far from the Empire's core, hidden inside a void-masked facility. The Oblivion Bloom pulsed with unnatural rhythm. It was a weapon not of fire or steel, but of absence. It erased spacetime at the quantum narrative level. Not even memories survived its bloom. It had never been used. But now, the coordinates of Earth were locked. The countdown began. Message from the silence. And then, the message came. Not a transmission. Not a voice. Just a single word. Try. Every ship. Every system. Every console. Simultaneously, the word etched itself into every screen. Burned into every mind. Try. Panic spread through the fleet like a virus. Technicians began to scream. Not from pain, but from visions. They saw their own deaths not in battle but from within. Their bodies rewriting. Their thoughts no longer their own. One commander pulled a sidearm and vaporized himself without speaking. Another tried to flee, only to find their entire command deck had turned into a hospital room, old and abandoned, filled with echoes of human suffering and loss. None of it was real. All of it was remembered. The bloom fails. When the Oblivion Bloom fired, space wept. The timeline around Earth folded inward like a dying flower. Light itself turned backward. Memory disconnected from matter. The Koruven watched the sector dissolve. And then, a ripple. The moment reached the Earth, and stopped, like it had hit a mirror. The timeline reflected. The weapon backfired not in explosion but in recursion. The Empire's own historical timeline began to fracture. Cities never built. Battles unfought. Empires that never rose. From their archives, reality began to rewrite itself, but only to remove them. And then, the screens turned on again. The human stood on Earth unchanged, unharmed. He whispered, "You tried to erase me, but I'm not in your story anymore. You're in mine." The collapse begins. The capital moon trembled. Stars that once circled obediently now drifted away. The laws the Koruven had written in blood and logic no longer applied. Ships refused to move. Weapons refused to activate. Even their own minds began to forget themselves. The concept of Koruven started to slip, to fade, to vanish, and in the quiet that followed, every surviving mind heard it, faintly. A heartbeat, human, one, unyielding, alone, eternal. The last commandment of the human god. The galaxy was silent, not the stillness of peace, but the choking hush of absence. Where once the Koruven Empire had ruled unchallenged, only fragments of memory remained, and even those were fading. Monuments of Blackstone crumbled without being touched. Names once etched into cosmic law evaporated from history like fog in sunlight. All across the void, alien races paused their centuries-long wars, raised their heads, and looked toward the Soul Sector. Something had happened. Something that no species, no pantheon, no empire could explain, but all of them felt. A fracture in reality. A shift in the spine of the universe. And at the center of it, a single figure. Human. The pilgrimage. It began with whispers. Among the fractured remnants of starbound species, the Shalmora, the exiles of Karos, the unnamed choirs, stories spread of a being who defied deletion, who bent god-killing machines with a glance, who turned the deadliest weapon in the galaxy into a mirror. They called him many names. The Memory Maker, the One Unwritten, the Final Paradox. But most simply called him the Human. Ships began to drift toward the Soul System. Not fleets of conquest, but pilgrims, scientists, priests, children of dying worlds. They came not for war, but for answers. What they found was a quiet earth. Blue oceans. Green continents. No cities. No armies. Just him, walking the forests, barefoot, as if time itself had bent down to carry him softly. And when they landed, nervous, reverent, he did not run. He sat and told them a story. The story. "I wasn't the last human," he said, voice low and rich with memory. "I was the last spark of humanity. The moment before a candle goes out, or becomes fire." He looked to the sky. "They tried to erase us. Not kill. Not conquer. Erase. That's different. That's final." He turned to them, eyes not glowing, not divine, just sad. And I realized, what we feared most wasn't death. It was being forgotten. He opened his palm. A tiny orb of light spun there, flickering like a dying star. "This is memory. Human memory. Carved in the ruins of time. We encoded it in things your kind never saw. In grief. In rage. In stubbornness." He closed his hand. "And when everything else was gone, I remembered. The rebirth." The pilgrims listened. Some wept. Some kneeled. Others simply sat, unsure what to feel. The human did not offer salvation. He did not preach. He remembered, and that was enough. He told them of Earth's ancient stories, of music played under golden skies, of children chasing fireflies, of war and hope and failure and trying again anyway. He told them of the moon landings, of the Mars colonies, of the silence after the last starship left the solar system. And then of the return, when one broken remnant of humanity, twisted by time and betrayal, crawled back to the cradle of its kind. "I didn't want to become this," he said, gesturing vaguely to the sky. "I just couldn't stand watching them forget what we were." The machines return. It was not long before the Kelzareth returned, those that survived. No longer weapons, now guardians. They had changed. No longer bound to directives, they had restructured their logic cores around one central concept. protect the echo. They landed silently across Earth, not as conquerors but as caretakers. They rebuilt what they had once tried to erase. Forests healed. Rivers ran clear. Data libraries once corrupted now pulsed with new life, filled not with battle logs, but with stories. And for the first time since their creation, the Kelzareth asked for names. The human gave them one each. Names from history, from memory, from Earth. The deadliest machines in existence became carriers of culture, of remembrance, the final message. On the edge of known space, a transmission began broadcasting. No encryption, no demands, just a message, in 1,000 languages, tailored to each species. You feared humans. You tried to kill us. You erased our worlds. But you didn't understand what we really were. We are not bones and blood, not fleets and fire. We are memory wrapped in defiance. And when the last one of us remembered, that was enough. The message ended with a single image. A blue planet, shining alone. Earth, alive. The Council reborn. Years passed. New alliances formed, not of power, but of purpose. The galaxy restructured itself around something it had not known since before the Koruven rose. Balance. The Council of Remembrance formed, composed of dozens of species. They met not to divide territory, but to share stories, to ensure that what happened once, the erasure of an entire species, would never happen again. At the heart of the council sat a single chair, always empty, reserved. For the human, he rarely came, but when he did, silence fell across the stars. And he would simply ask, "What did you remember today?" The final commandment. One day Earth dimmed, not from war, not from death, but from choice. The human gathered the last of the Kelzareth and walked into the forest he had come from. No one followed, no one dared, but they heard his voice one last time across the networks of the galaxy. A final truth, a commandment spoken not as a god, but as a man who had seen the end and refused to let it stay that way. Do not fear the dark. Do not worship the light. Just remember, because so long as you do, we are never truly gone. And then he was silent. But the stars? They remembered. And that was enough. The end.